For reasons of privacy, stand-ins were used in several scenes in this video. All the events depicted are true.
Hi, Adam.
Thanks for everything, Jen.
Yeah, get there safely.
Hope so. At long last, going back to the Philippines, get my stuff. Then I can proceed with the rest of my life, as it was supposed to be prior to the pandemic. Every one of us has a life story that we were in the process of writing for ourselves the first time we were told to isolate and separate for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. With the shadow of a pandemic looming for the first time in a century, how could we, at that time, know that for many of us, most of us, the path we were blazing to our own destinies would be altered or perhaps erased, not just for weeks, but for months or even years. 3 years on, we can calculate with some certainty the lives that were lost, the physical impact. But we've only just started to take stock of what each of us who survived lost in time, in opportunities, and in what might have been. Those of you who have followed this show know part of my own story, but not all of it. You know that in March 2020, I was headed back to the U.S. for what I thought was a temporary stay, only to be trapped in a spare room at my old house for 9 months before I was able to escape and spend the remainder of the pandemic in Bali. My belongings, left behind in Manila, remained out of my reach from that moment until the point this video begins in April 2022. After 2 years of closure, everybody's going back to the Philippines, loaded down with stuff to bring back to their families from the United States. This is going to be one packed flight. What I didn't tell you is that the Los Angeles trip was meant to be the last step in cutting my connections to the U.S. in preparation to solidify a new life living and working in Manila. I also didn't tell you that I had met someone while doing the show that I thought had potential for a long-term relationship, and that I had suggested to that person that upon my return to Manila, we should move in together and see if we would make good partners. Had my airplane left just a few hours later, lockdown would have fallen over the Philippines and she and I would have spent the pandemic together in a condo in Manila. Instead, we were kept apart in our own separate countries for over 2 years. Throughout the first year of the pandemic, she and I kept each other sane in our respective cages, touching base during the overlapping hours that we were both awake, and even watching Tagalog movies together online so I could practice for what I hoped would be my imminent return to the Philippines. If it had not been for her, the days spent hiking the mountains, and copious consumption of red wine at night, I would certainly have lost my mind. Unfortunately, when I was liberated by my escape to Bali, she still found herself trapped in her own situation. Over time, that inequity created tensions, and our friendship ultimately splintered. We fell out of regular touch and tried to move on with our lives. But with the pandemic and travel restrictions still lingering for 1 more year, I, like much of the world, was still in limbo. 14-hour flight, an extra hour in the tarmac, sitting right next to a very vocal baby the whole way. Welcome back at last. So here you see me in April of 2022, finally returning to Manila at the point I left off 2 years before, only to ask myself, is there any thread left to pick up? Was there still a possibility of restarting that relationship? And more than that, how much had the country itself changed after living through some of the longest and harshest pandemic restrictions in the world? Before I could truly move on, I needed the answers to those questions, and I needed to get my stuff back. On this 50th episode of Adam Walks Around, you'll see me cycle back to where the show first started and to where the path of my life was paused. And you'll see the surprising twists and turns that took me back where I started, not once, but twice. I frickin' hate this. Hello, everybody.
Welcome to the Philippines.
I've been here before. Tsaka para sa aking mga kaibigang Pilipino, ang unang parte ng storya ay hanggo sa matagal ng panahon.
Para maintindihan ang tunay na kahulugan, huwag kalimutan panoorin hanggang dulo.
So that was 50 minutes of my life that kind of sucked, but you know, I got it good compared to a lot of people. You're reminded of that on this ride. But I don't got it good when it comes to sitting in a jeepney for an hour. 6'1", no. Bearing gifts for the folks that have held on to my stuff for 2 years. Kumusta, pare? After being in that jeepney, it's all scrunched up for half an hour, sitting on the side of the road feels pretty damn good. Hey! Dogs from Bali, it would appear. Look at my hair, it's pretty good stuff.
Foreigner. Wait. Go home.
All right. That place looks the same. Thank you for keeping my things for 2 years and 2 months.
Always welcome.
I know I said that I would be back very quickly. It was my intention, but I had some problems getting back to the Philippines.
Of course, because the pandemic is,
No, I just didn't want to go.
Oh, yeah.
Despite the uncomfortable jeepney ride, the first step back to Manila had gone well. My estranged friend had helped me get back the half of my possessions I had left in Navotas. And though it wasn't clear that she wanted to reconcile, we had still gotten along fine. The next step, though, would prove more daunting. Trying to establish a beachhead to live and work in Manila. I quickly discovered that, in the immediate days post-COVID, that would be a tall order.
Where trouble smells like lemon drops, way above the chimney tops. That's where you find me.
Well, after a month of being here in Manila, I've come to a few conclusions. Rents have just only gone up since the pandemic, unlike a lot of other places where they've gone down. And there aren't really any immediate prospects for work, and anything I do online, I'm going to have to get that much more work just to pay the bills. It's maybe just a little too early in the game to be back here. It's hard to believe that it was just over 3 years ago when you saw me take one of my very first jeepney rides on one of these jeepneys here in Angeles City on episode 4 of this show. I started this show in the Philippines, and I'm just now rediscovering my love for the place because there have been so many things that I've had to contend with, either that I'd grown unused to or that just flat out were different now than they were before. And my budget being a little tight, I determined that I couldn't really take any wild adventures here, but I did want to show you something, so I decided I wanted to go back and try to find some of the people that I met in the very first episodes of this show, and maybe use that as a reference point for me and for you to get a sense of how much things are the same or different 3 years down the road after we've all been through a pandemic. Here in the Philippines, they had some of the most stringent restrictions in the world. They were in lockdown for something close to 2 years. At one point, you not only had to wear a mask outside, you still do, by the way, I'm kind of fudging things at the moment, but you had to wear a full face shield. And in a country as crowded as this, on the one hand, you can kind of understand why it was that strict. On the other hand, you know, it was going to spread no matter what, and they didn't get a very good result for all that trouble. We're all exhausted from COVID, the disease itself, and the mitigation measures we all had to live under. But Filipinos got it a lot harder than most of us, with a lot fewer resources. It's been really tough for them. So I'm off to see if I can find the coconut juice vendor that we met in episode 5 and sent me on my quest for dragon fruit. Interestingly, when I did that show, I barely knew what dragon fruit was. It's now become one of my favorite things to eat here in Southeast Asia, kind of ironic. So yeah, that's one thing that's changed in 3 years. I've become a fan of dragon fruit.
Walking along Rojas Highway, I could see ample evidence of the economic effects of COVID and was sad to see the Mexican restaurant where I got my margaritas in episode 5 standing abandoned. When I arrived at the Korean district we explored in that same episode, however, I was shocked to find a completely different story.
Looks like Koreatown's hanging tough mostly. This area actually looks a good bit snazzier than the last time I was here. That's interesting. This is the spot where those kids were looking up at me in episode 5, and they built this whole deal up here. They've even got a spot. Dang, well, that's kind of cool. We paint on the roads. Dang. She's critical. This could be part of the reason for the new prosperity. Looks like the Korean influence is now extending across the river. Yep, for sure. Very interesting. I wonder how our friend Elena, if we find her, will feel about Philcor, the Korean influence in the Philippines, now.
Philcor. It's already Philcor now.
You say Philcor?
Yes.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
Filipino-Korean. Philcor is so many Korean living here in Philippines. They are studying here. They are living here. They have a wife here. Maybe it's cheaper here. It's a open country.
This neighborhood's just banging, man. Hello. I see it. It's a wonderful looking tricycle. This wasn't here before either. And you know what I'm not seeing is our friend the buko juice dealer. This whole place is, wow, it's not local town anymore. The Koreans have moved in. And no sign of our friend Elena. I think Elena was back where all those tricycle drivers were, if my memory serves. And this whole neighborhood is unrecognizable. Before, in episode 5, we talked about how the Korean influence ended at the river's edge, and over here was the less affluent, to say the least, local area. But none of this stuff was here before. A new Starbucks, a tourist police station. Despite the pandemic, it looks like there's been a ton of, well, what else can we call it? Gentrification. Wow. I'm gonna go back and try to talk to the tricycle drivers, see if they know what happened to Elena. Ikaw dito araw-araw?
Yeah.
Alam mo ng tao na venta buko juice dito dati, si Elena.
Buko juice.
Yeah.
Oo.
Yeah, alam mo tao nagbenta buko juice dito dati.
Oo. Dati.
Pangalan siya ay si Elena.
Elena. Dati magkita kami Jenny, buko juice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yan ang dito. Oo, hindi namin alam kung saan nakatira ngayon siya.
Mas mabagal.
Hindi namin alam kung saan na nakatira ngayon yan.
Okay, salamat. Alam mo, tao na nagbenta buko juice dito dati, si Elena? Elena.
Tagal na ulit. Matagal na. So ano sir? Nung at the pandemic pa.
Salamat ha. Wow. Some shit never changes, unfortunately. There's still so much beauty in this country that I haven't explored yet. I'm hoping that soon, as I get a stable place to base myself, I can come back and attend to that. But for now, back we go. Tell me about your establishment, sir.
Hi, I am doorman here in Dimples.
And what is the name of your place?
Burgos!
Oh, the Burgos is the street.
Yeah, Burgos Street.
Anong
Makati,
tiniwagan,
Makati.
anong tinitawag mo ng gusali nito?
Bar Dimples.
So I was just getting my laundry like I was back in episode 4, and I ran across this fellow. You might recall him from Dimples. You used to work at Dimples.
Yeah, I was working Dimples
Yes.
before. Yeah.
So, and now you're working at
Bourbon.
Bourbon. So from
Yes.
Dimples to Bourbon.
From Dimples Bourbon.
So how last time we met was 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
3.5 years.
So so how has,
Big difference between before and now.
like, in what way?
Because not much foreigner like before. There's a lot of foreigner here.
Well, they didn't let us come in
Yeah.
for a while. I can attest to that.
All right.
Yeah. So, but is it getting better now? Starting to come back a little bit?
Anyway, the business getting back slow.
Yeah.
We hope that we're getting back again as like before.
So when did Burgos reopen, or did you ever close?
All bars here are closed during the pandemic days.
So when did you reopen?
By this year, 2022, since February.
So it's all.
February.
So now it's what, June? So it's been 4 months
Yeah,
only.
4 months ago.
Yeah.
4 months ago.
Well-
Because Manila is on level 1.
Yeah.
Yep. Not all bars open, but most of bars
Yeah.
back story.
Well, it's good to see you again.
All right, all right.
And hopefully there will be many more foreigners with a
we hope so. We hope so.
with a la boc now.
Okay.
Okay, this man is an artist. He makes the only margarita in Asia that is as good as the best margaritas in Los Angeles. They're awesome, they're tasty, they're flavorful, and they'll knock you on your ass. Oh yeah, here we are, the famous Chupacabra margarita is making a comeback. Here we are. It's the official end of the pandemic. Oh, and watch me jinx it now.
At this point in the video, there was to have been an extensive interview with my friend where she spoke eloquently about her experiences during the lockdown, having come to Manila to begin her own new life, only to find herself kept inside for 6 months, and of the effect that had on her and other Filipinos. Later, for reasons that will soon become clear, she asked me not to show this interview, and I of course honored that request. But I will include one bit of audio because honestly, to me, it was the keystone of this whole episode.
Just a challenge, and we know that we can get over it.
It's the Filipino way.
It's the Filipino way, exactly.
Now we're about to revisit the very first place we ever went to on Adam Walks Around, the Legazpi Village Sunday Market in Makati. I'm sorry to see that the musicians that I recorded with for my Boule album and also jammed with on the first episode aren't here anymore, but it's really cool to see at least this place has come back to life, and you know, this feels somewhat unchanged. One interesting thing, I don't recognize any of the vendors. It seems like there's been a lot of turnover here. This is the hot season in the Philippines, and I have to say that even though usually the humidity doesn't bother me that much, it's really bad today. Thank God.
gentleman whose pack that is, who didn't want to be on camera, just engaged me in a conversation. And he just brought up in Tagalog, didn't you just have a school shooting, which at the time of this taping we have had, and I bet by the time you see this we'll have been another one. And he said, you know, there's something wrong there, being in America. And for a Filipino to say that, being as polite as they generally are, that's kind of a strong statement. And, you know, however you fall on the subject of guns, I have to say that I hear this a lot over here. You know, being American, it's one of the first things people talk about is their incredulity at the amount of gun violence we have. So, however you feel about that topic, that's a fact. So after 2 months here, much as I love the people, love the country, I can't make it work here. Not now. Not until I'm either making a lot more money or things here, or there's just a little more available for me in terms of accommodations, food, you know, stuff like that. So I'm heading back to Cambodia in 4 days. There's much cheaper places to stay, and I'll be able to go back to playing, which will be kind of cool. It's kind of sad though. I waited so long to come back here, and I got to leave again. But it's just not the right time. It's been a struggle, you know. I mean, every day, just trying to get the basic needs met. I don't know quite how to describe it, but something always doesn't work. The internet stops, or the place you're supposed to buy something closed, or there's a sign down there for a store, and I went in and there's a laundromat, and they said to me in Tagalog, there's no store here. It's really no store here. There's still a sign. Well, that's kind of how it is. And it's just kind of every day has been a bit like that. And it's just exhausting. It's stressful to get around. It's really difficult to get from one place to another. At the same time, it's extremely hot. And for me, I have the extra special problem that I'm too big for a lot of the apartments, a lot of the transportation conveyances. And to add to that, a lot of the restrictions put in place during COVID, a lot of which were pretty extreme. I mean, they really prevented people from leaving their neighborhoods, prevented people from going out of their little spot. So they closed a lot of roads, they closed a lot of gates, and they still haven't reopened a lot of them. So, you know, you go on Google Maps, you might go, yeah, like right there. That's just one of many gates that was closed during the pandemic and now isn't open. I nearly got locked out the other night. In fact, I did get locked out. If my Airbnb host hadn't come to got me, I would have had to walk about 3 miles in the middle of the night with a full pack of groceries to get back home. I had decided to spend my last few days in the suburban province of Cavite just to immerse myself in how ordinary Filipinos live. I walked around areas that ran the gamut from malls to outright slums and received a better understanding of the challenges I had living here as a foreigner, and also of some of the challenges everyday Filipinos face that I never will. Since I did not expect to return, it was a perspective I felt I owed myself and I owed them. So you're all wondering, what happened to the woman? During my stay in Manila, we had started to spend more time together and remembered how much we enjoyed each other's company. Had I been able to afford to stay, our relationship probably would have continued to grow closer. But there were still unresolved issues between us, and since I couldn't sustain being in Manila, I suggested that she come to Cambodia for a visit once I was settled and see if we could work them out. She agreed to come, but because of a controversial practice called offloading, immigration officials did not allow her to board her flight. After that very upsetting experience, with her now unable to leave and me unable to return, once again, Outside forces broke the relationship, and that was that. I spent 9 months making a modest living performing music in Cambodia. I was genuinely excited to return to the stage, but with the language barrier making it hard to bond with the local population, I found myself socially at the center of a very cosmopolitan, but very small, expat population. I struggled to find a place to fit. The expats I bonded with most naturally and easily were always Filipino. Over time, the music work was becoming more competitive and more physically demanding, and by the spring of 2023, I was wondering if I shouldn't make a change. And then a very unexpected thing happened. I was approached by an American company to represent them as a consultant in Manila. They made a generous offer and the work was interesting, and so exactly 1 year after this video began, I found myself in exactly the same place, with the job and the financial lifeline I had so desperately wished for back then. To make things even more eerie, my new company's office was actually in the same building that my friend worked in. I stopped by to see her. She was surprised, but we went out for a very friendly lunch. And she told me that she had moved on and now had a new boyfriend that had a better chance of fulfilling her hopes. We hugged, we cried, and wished each other well. And we meant it. And so I'm left to ask myself, what does it all mean? Twice, we were kept apart when a relationship was possible, likely, only to be forced back together when it wasn't. The hands of fate pushed so forcefully that it's impossible not to wonder what I am supposed to learn. But even if the woman is gone, the place still remains. As of now, I have lived in the Philippines for 7 months, and this time, everything has gone just fine. In fact, I've traveled all over the country, made new friends, and even recorded a song in Tagalog. It's been, so far, a happy phase. So the lesson I've taken from this is that I wasn't meant to fall in love with a girl, but to regain my love for all Filipinos and this crazy, messy, improbably optimistic culture that always reaches for joy. My place may not have been with her, but it might have been with here. Now with my contract nearly at an end, I ask myself, what will this new phase of my new life look like? Will I stay here? Will I go back to Bali or back to Cambodia to play again? Or to somewhere else completely new? Whatever hardships and disappointments lay along the way, how privileged and lucky I am that these possibilities exist. Like I said at the beginning, we all have a life story we're in the process of writing for ourselves. And I can only hope that the next push by the hand of fate takes me to where I'm most wanted and where I belong. I'll be ready for whatever comes. And when I figure it out, I'll get back to you.
Flew in from the USA, landed at an AIA. Take a jeepney into the city. Filipino.